Hello, friends, and welcome to Rise Up in Real Estate, where we are on a quest. We are looking for the extra in the ordinary. And I'm Tad Fulford, and I will be your host on this journey where we will take an honest look at what makes ordinary people extraordinary. Exactly how can we be extra in our personal and our professional lives? In this season of the Rise Up in Real Estate adventure, there will be a monthly rhythm, meaning each month we will have 4 unique episodes. In one episode, we'll tackle a pressing current real estate industry thought. In another, we will chat with a local difference maker in the real estate space. For our 3rd episode, we will host a respected national thought leader. And finally, we will have a 4th bonus and surprise episode. And in each episode, we will be digging into not only what those people think, but who those people are. Along the way, it's my hope that you'll laugh some, you'll be challenged some, you will get inspired some, and if we are lucky, maybe even figure out a way or two you can rise up in your own life and be the best human that you can be. So the challenge is, let's all rise up. Welcome back, Rise Up Nation. I'm excited to have you here today because, and I know I say this a lot, I have a very, very special guest. And yes, it's real estate related. I know you'll be happy to hear that. This show is called Rise Up in Real Estate. So you would think every once in a while I would stumble on a real estate guest. And I've got a really good friend of mine, one of my favorite female entrepreneurs in our area. Of course, we're in coastal South Carolina. I want to introduce you to my guest today, Miss Jenny Nicely. Jenny, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So
once we're done, you'll be like underwhelmed, but we're honored to have you here. I mean, I think I want to start by just saying it's an honor to have you. I know you're busy. I know personally you have been through the ringer lately, but we were talking before the show, and I appreciate your candor in that this is life. And so we're going to roll with life, and my guests can handle the truth. We've heard, if you've been listening to any of our episodes, man, I think I'm up to 4 guests that have cried on our show. So anything is good. So why don't you tell me, Jenny, just briefly your story? Like where were you born? Where did you come from? What do you do now? And I'll ask you questions as we kind of unfold your journey.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Rockingham, North Carolina. Most people do not know where that is unless you were into NASCAR or you travel through it to get to the beach. So it's a very, very small town, 1 high school. That's how I grew up. Okay. And I graduated high school, went to UNC Charlotte, and I studied business and marketing. And when I was 19, let me back up. I met my ex-husband the 2nd week of my freshman year in college, and his mother was an assistant to a real estate team. And we were eating dinner over there one night, and she came up to me and she said, "Do you need some extra money on the side? Because we need someone to come in and kind of do some clerical services, some paperwork and putting brochures together and copies and things like that." And I said, "Sure, I'm a broke college kid. I will absolutely do that." So I started with them. It was a team of 3. They had been in business 23 years. And as I continued to help with them, they continued to add more and more and more. And by 19 and 20, it was kind of at the end of my 19th year, I started taking real estate classes, and I got my license when I was 20. So I was still in college at that time. And so I continued to take on more and more. And when I was through with school, I wanted what I thought was a real job because, not a lot of people say, I want to be a real estate instructor when they grow up. That's right. Not an attractive thing. But so this all fell in my plate. So I started selling with this team, and in my first year in business, around 19 and 20, we sold 115 transactions that year. And you got to keep in mind, this was 2004 and 5. And then 6. And so we were in the bubble. But as a 19 and 20-year-old, I didn't know we were in the bubble. I'm sitting here making very good money at a young age, thinking it can only get better from here, Right. So I joined forces and I went through all of the rankings. I did listing coordinator. I did closing coordinator. I was buyer's agent. And then eventually I broke off on my own and I started doing listings. And so the economy bottomed out with the housing recession in 2007. And I was still in Charlotte at the time. So this was August 2007. And I had gotten married in 2005, and my husband and I were trying to have a child, and I have fertility issues. So we spent 2.5 years on fertility treatments trying to get pregnant. And in 2009, I was working for Prudential Carolinas Realty at the time, now called Berkshire Hathaway. And Prudential came to me and they said, look, the economy has changed. Things have shifted. We're looking for someone to run our office in Denver, North Carolina. So we want you to apply and interview. And well, I got that position. So this was a very small firm in Denver, North Carolina, on Lake Norman area. Mm-hmm. And I started on a Tuesday, not having a clue that we found out on Thursday I was pregnant. Wow. And so 2 days after starting, and I will still to this day say that was Jesus, because I now have corporate health insurance. And I had my son and came home from the hospital, and I said, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I'm staying home with him. This is my priority. So I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I ended up staying at home with my son for about 1.5 years. Now, to recap, I was making a lot of money early on in my career. And then we decided, obviously it tapered off as the recession was hitting, but then we decided that we were going to give up my salary and everything I was doing to be able to stay home. So that's another drop in the income. And 2 months after I decided to stay home, my husband was a graphic designer for a church and a NFL retired football player. And he got let go from both positions within 2 months of me quitting my position. So we went from making a lot of money to making absolutely no money. Wow. We were completely broke. We didn't have milk in the fridge, gas in the car, didn't know where the next paycheck was coming from. And luckily, my dad helped us out, took care of us. He ended up purchasing a mobile home in North Myrtle Beach. And the goal behind this was we would live in this mobile home in North Myrtle, and we would rent out our big house in Charlotte so that we didn't have to pay the mortgage. And when we got back on our feet, we would move back to Charlotte into our house, and we would have this mobile home as a vacation home. And that is how we got to the beach. So it was never a plan to stay. It was a temporary fix for our financial situation. So my ex-husband and I, we did photography for a while, just to make ends meet. And we ended up filing bankruptcy actually in 2014, which is a little bit later in the story, but we lost everything. So in 2012, we moved to North Myrtle, November 2011, March 2012. My dad said, Jenny, what do you want to do? This isn't you. You have a better future than what you're living right now. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I know real estate. I said, but I can't sell it because it's commission based. I have a 1.5-year-old. We don't have milk in the fridge. I can't wait on a commission check. I'm brand new into the area. I don't know a soul, and I need money now. He said, okay, what does that mean? I said, I can open a real estate school. I can teach them how to do real estate. And he said, okay, what does that mean? How much money do you need to start a school? And I said, $800. And he put $800 in my bank account, March 2012. And we are celebrating our 11th year here at Pinnacle off of $800. So that's how I got into this. I do think it's a God thing because it's my passion. I absolutely love what I'm doing, helping people raise the standard in their own life and become whatever they want to become, because I think anybody can do that. It's just having that drive, having that push, and having the person who can help you. So it was not my plan. It was a plan that was set in place for me, but that's how it played out.
Yeah. So I learned some things. I feel like I know you pretty good, and I've taken a lot of your classes. And actually, my son is taking an online real estate school now, and he's going to be taking your class coming up. So he's just getting into the business, much like you did in the very beginning. But I learned some things about you that I didn't know. So I appreciate you being an open book. One thing I learned just listening to you is that you're not afraid. Well, you're not afraid, but you're not afraid to walk through an open door either. I mean, fertility issues are no joke. I appreciate you being willing to share that. And now you have a strapping, healthy. How old is Camden now?
He will be 13 next month.
13. And I've seen him on social media, baseball player, and just I'm sure he's a handful, but just I can see by the look on your face. You guys can't see it. He's the light of your life, right?
He's such a good kid. He's bigger than I am now, but he's such a good kid.
Well, that's because you're tiny. Don't even start with that. And I didn't know you were a 49er. I had forgotten that, UNC Charlotte. And I also had forgotten the story about let's buy a trailer for my daughter in North Myrtle Beach, and that turned into home. So you've got a little bit of a I was going to say a nomadic spirit. So your journey is like nomadic, like you have been kind of on a journey this whole time, but it's really not. Nomad means, I mean, if you're looking at somebody who just kind of wanders, that's not you. You have some direction. Like of all the people that I know, you are very confident. You're very sure about the things that you teach. You stand up for the personal issues in your life in that way. Where does all that come from, Jenny? Is that from your parents? Is that just from the school of hard knocks, or is that even true? Are you a confident young woman?
I think it depends. I laughed and said thank you when you said that. And there's meaning behind that because I am very confident in different aspects of my life. And as a female in this world, I can be insecure about certain things. Absolutely. Image and body and things like that. I think a lot of women struggle with that. And I absolutely do on a regular basis. But when it comes to real estate, when it comes to business, when it comes to my team, it comes to my vision of what I want for my school, I am confident in that. So it just depends on the topic that you're talking about. And I do believe it came through adversity. When I was young, to give you a little bit of history to talk about the purpose, or not the purpose, but the reasoning behind my insecurities. I grew up as a little fat kid that got picked on. And I remember coming home daily crying about how a couple little girls were picking on me. And, when you have almost your entire childhood where you're living that life, it's very hard as an adult to snap out of it and go, that's not me, because you still see that kid in the mirror, So I used to be very quiet. I used to be shy because of those things that were happening. And I think as time, I grew up, I became more mature. I became more mentally stable and did a lot of studying and reading and realizing who I am as a person and not what I was labeled. That's where that sense of confidence comes from. And that's where my, I'm very in your face, loud, not obnoxious, but I just am who I am. And I like to say it in class, what comes through my head comes out my mouth. I'm either sorry or you're welcome. It is what it is. It's just easy to keep up with that way. And I think it took my childhood. It took growing up into an adult to be able to have that confidence and drive and focus and all the other things that come along with it.
Yeah, that's that. I thought that might be your answer. And I wanted to say before we go any further, because not all my listeners know me that well, and none of them know you yet, that when I say that I'm proud of what you've done, it has nothing to do with male or female. It has nothing to do with poverty or riches. It has everything to do with human spirit and human ability. And I want to be real clear. And I'm married to a very powerful woman. And if anyone thinks that I grew up with one, and so I support that 100%. So as I'm interviewing you, I want it to be clear to our listeners that I'm emphasizing your humanity, not your gender. So I hope that comes across when we talk.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your school, because some listeners know and some don't. But this is not just like you teaching one or two classes a year. This is a serious endeavor, and I really appreciate what you've built, because we built a company that has a footprint. And your school, tell me, it has made an impact in our area and even beyond that. Tell me a little bit about the size of it and what you accomplish each year. And from its humble beginnings of you $800. I think that's really cool.
Yes. Yeah. I can't begin to tell you how much this has grown and where we are going from here. We are just on the horizon of the plans and the goals. And right now I have 11 people a part of our team. I don't call them staff. We are a team here. When someone falls, the rest of you come in and pick them up. And we've just experienced that with a death here on the team. And it's brought us closer and closer. We have a 6,000 square foot building here in the Myrtle Beach area. That is our hub. All of our classes are offered in person, on Zoom, and self-paced. So we are approved for all self-paced courses in South Carolina. We are also approved in North Carolina. So we teach North Carolina in person and Zoom. And we are about one step away from being approved in Tennessee. So we will be opening up a location in Nashville in about 12 months from now. The goal next will be Georgia and then Florida and eventually the all 50 states. So that's the plan. And we are growing. I have 3 people right now that are about to start with us. Just hired on a new marketing director. And so growth is happening vigorously, very fast.
Yeah. So I would like to say that not that this matters or means much, but I'd like to dedicate this time we have together to John.
Yes.
I know that you lost one of your dear friends and inspectors less than 2 weeks ago, I guess. John Collier and I just had lunch with someone who knew him very well, and he was very well respected. I have several students that I've talked to over the years that spoke extremely highly of him, and that's sad. So we're in honor of his wife and his family that he left behind, and you guys, we'll just dedicate this episode to him.
Thank you.
I know can't imagine how hard it's been to lead. I mean, when you're a leader, though, Jenny, like you are, you have to lead through the good and the bad, right? So tell me what it's been like in that, not the personal part of it, but taking care of your team and growing them through what happened.
Yeah, it has been something I never realized I was going to have to do and lead through. And, when John passed, it was completely unexpected. He left work that day completely fine. He actually was texting me on the way to the hospital, and he passed away before he got to the hospital. So he was texting me 15 minutes before he passed and telling me, my class has to do this today. I'm in the hospital. I'll call you later and update you. And so it was just completely unexpected. And so I think sometimes when it's unexpected, it's even harder to deal with and grieve and go through. But John was my director of operations, and he held about 3 different hats that most people wouldn't be able to hold. He was an author, but he was also in a managerial role. And when you do that, that's typically not the same human being that is an author and a manager. So he was capable of doing both and doing both very well. And so when he passed, not only are we grieving, John was a part of the team, but he was very much like my dad. He played that role and was one of my biggest cheerleaders and supporters. And so to have that rock disappear out of my life on top of the business, on top of all the team members grieving, it was a lot. I didn't really have time to grieve myself because I need to make sure everyone here is okay. And I'm having one-on-one meetings with my leadership team here at the school and in my administrative side of the business. And, just one of them today said, I've really been struggling with John being gone and the grieving process. And she said, everybody has, and I understand it, but I just want to let you know that's been some of my issues lately, is just getting through that. It's definitely quiet without him here. And, we're in transition. So it's hard. It's hard to lead when you're grieving yourself. It's hard to lead when you have a void in your business, but then you have a void in your heart because this impactful person is gone. So it's really, really been a challenge for us. But I will tell you, and like John would hope that this would be the case, we are all so much tighter because of that situation. I had just brought on a marketing director 6 weeks before he passed, and John had taken Dan under his wing, and they had become really close. And Dan said the other day to me in one of the one-on-one meetings, he's so upset that John's passed because he got so close to him in the 6 weeks. He said, but my goodness, I feel like I've been here for years and years and years because of this situation. We've all been able to become even closer than we were originally, and we were really close before.
Yeah, so that's one thing I've always respected about your team is you seem very unified. Two things that you just said, since I've got gray hair and I'm much, much older than you, I'll say you can lead and grieve. Sometimes I think as leaders, we're asked to be above that. And I think as you grieve, your team will learn. They will see who you are. They will recognize your vulnerability. They'll recognize your strength. Strength isn't always, some of the strongest memories I have of my dad, who never cried, was when he cried. And the other thing is you can, through loss, your team can be galvanized.
Right.
Like it can take your team to a place that they never could have gone through. It's almost like it's a crash course in growth when you experience loss. Like you either galvanize or you disperse. And because of the kind of leader you are, I'm sure that you will galvanize, and you'll what your marketing person said is not a surprise to me, that you can, it's almost like you grow light years in an instant, and I think sudden is so hard. Like, I remember when I heard that news and I messaged you, I was like, what? It was like, literally, you just said 1 minute he's here, 1 minute he's not. And what a lesson for all of us.
That's exactly right. I have found, and you say that, and it brings up a very good point. I did grieve during leading the team through this process. I just grieved different than I've ever grieved before. And it was because of that leadership role. So we got together, and, I've cried a few times with my team, and I've been, a little bit different in how I've handled some things, not good or bad, just different. And that's a part of me grieving is how I'm handling certain things, So I agree with you. You can grieve and lead at the same time. I just feel like I grieved different because I was leading.
Right. You go home and you let Joey see it all. Right.
That's right.
And Camden gets to see most of it. But that's a very mature way to be. If you live or own property along the coast of South Carolina, you probably need insurance. We Insure Advocates is a locally owned independent agency with industry-leading service support. Our team of customer-centric agents can explain your coverage options and help you craft an insurance program that fits your needs and budget. Data-driven for better value, people-led for better service. That's the difference of we. For all of your property insurance needs, please find us at weinsureadvocates.com or call us at 843-491-6990. What's been I don't know how to ask this, and this was not on the script, but I'm inclined to ask it. And if it's not appropriate, you just tell me, and that's fine, because I've had people tell me that before. I just seem to ask everything that pops into my head.
That's okay.
I know your story. My listeners don't all know your story over the last 12 to 24 months. Mm-hmm. You've had a lot of adversity, like a lot of adversity. And you don't have to share as much of it as you don't want to, but how have you found that your team has changed as you have gone through all of that? Does that question make sense?
It does make sense. And I don't mind sharing it at all. I have been an open book. You know me. I am an open book. So I'll tell your listeners, I was very sick for 11 months. We spent 11 months trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And when I say 11 months, that's just when we started the process of trying to figure out what my sickness is and what was going on with me. But reality is I had been sick for 3 years. And it just started to show face around the 11-month period. I went to 6 doctors, 22 vials of blood, EKG, ER visit, CAT scan. I was on so much medication. It was unreal. Right. Every time that came back, they would diagnose me with hypothyroidism. They diagnosed me with biotoxin syndrome, which is basically breathing in mold and lead, and your body is toxic. They diagnosed me with an autoimmune disease, and reality is I had breast implant illness. So I got breast implants in 2019, and I had them removed in November of 22, just to give you a time frame of when I had it. The week that I had them put in, I started losing my hair, and a lot of symptoms started happening that I didn't realize were happening until I look back on it, other than the hair loss. And we just blamed it on anesthesia, and then we blamed it on COVID, and then I had COVID again, and we blamed it on that. And I was steady getting more and more fatigue on just a regular daily schedule. I was exhausted by the end of the day. And so we had an excuse for it. Well, look how busy you are. Of course you're tired. You don't take a break and those types of things. So we always had an excuse. And I actually saw a video online of a woman who had breast implant illness and all the symptoms she had and how they diagnosed her. And I had been following the exact same path. They diagnosed her with hypothyroidism. They diagnosed her with an autoimmune, but it was actually breast implant illness that triggers lupus. So we do have an autoimmune. I had a temporary autoimmune that was every lupus symptom heightened. So I decided, because of process of elimination, no doctor would say that's what it is, because there's not a lot of studies on it. It was just my research. And because of all the doctors I had seen and all the things that I had gone through, it was process of elimination. Okay, no one knows what this is, but it is something, because the last 2 months I wasn't getting out of bed. I couldn't walk to the door to get DoorDash. That's how bad it was. And the doctors were saying, come back in a couple of months and we'll figure it out, but they never would. So I just said, I don't know if this is it or not, but I want them out, and I want them out like now, because I really think that that's what this is. And so I went to my surgeon who had put them in, and he was extremely receptive to it. And he has been inquisitive. He's asked me a lot of questions before, after. Basically, he's wanting to learn, because he says there's not a lot on the market, and he believes that it is a thing, But if word gets out, that's an entire industry that is ruined. And so I think they like, as an industry as a whole, like to kind of keep it hush hush. But I had them removed in November 22, and within 3 days, my symptoms started going away. Within 50% of my symptoms were gone. And within a month, all of them have been gone. So I am still rebuilding stamina because of how much toxins I had in my body that was weighing me down and causing the fatigue. So I'm still rebuilding stamina and the mental clarity, because that was a part of it too. But for the most part, my hair's growing back, and it's growing back. You mentioned gray earlier. It's growing back gray. It was dormant for 3 years. And so it came back a completely different texture, a completely different color. But the texture has kind of settled down, and it's back to my normal. But it is not to compare me to a cancer patient by any means, but it was dormant like that. And so it behaved the same way, Yeah. So it has been a roller coaster, but I did a 20-minute video. I posted it on social media. And I have had 22 women message me saying that they have the same symptoms. Some of them not as severe, most of them not as severe as mine, but some of them were. And 11 of them are having an explant surgery. And they've said we've looked for years and years and years. So I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And Tad, honestly, I almost died when it came to that situation. I was on that path, and I can still say today I'm thankful that I'm able to help others who may be going through it, because just like I mentioned earlier, I'm an open book. So if someone can learn from my situation and prevent something from happening to them, that's what I'm about.
Yeah. And that's, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you for your permission that people could reach out to you if they hear something that resonates. You'd be willing to talk to them about it. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So in the meantime, while you were going through all that, you just shut your school down and didn't teach any classes, and it didn't grow, right? How did you lead through all that?
I have an amazing team, and I will, I'll brag on you a little bit here too. I don't know if your listeners know, but we were in a leadership group together, and there was a book that you requested we all read. And it's about putting the right people on the right place on the bus. And that is exactly what my team is. I hire slow and I fire fast, and I do not like firing. Therefore, I hire slow to make sure they're the right people. But, during my sickness, during John's passing, that right there just proved the right people were on the bus and they were in the right seats, because I truly believe if I am not in this office and the business shuts down, then I don't have a business. I have a job. And so the goal for the entire team is to run without me. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and you need to know what needs to be done without me telling you. And so they really, really, they took a step forward and they carried it. And I did come in and teach, other than I would say the last month and a half. I had some instructors step into some of my classes, but that wasn't continuing education season. So it was luckily at the end of the year and not the beginning. But they had to cover for me.
That's awesome. That was The Energy Bus by John Gordon that she's talking about. Really a cool book. Easy. Anything John Gordon. I heard him on a podcast, and he's not a simple person at all, but his books are very simple. They're story-like, and all of them, like the coffee. I could name 10 that you need to read, but that's a really good one. I'm glad that meant something to you. And my listeners may not know this, or they might, but my wife, I think she's reached out to you, and she was very public about her explant surgery as well. And she went through, my wife is like you. She's a super, super studier. Like, she researched everything to the hilt and realized this was not a good thing for her. And so she went through this whole thing, and she's been much healthier, felt much better too. So thank you for sharing that, Jenny. That's not the kind of thing that you just, not everyone just speaks up about that. And I watched that video, the whole thing, when you put it out. And I appreciate you as a friend, and I'm glad you had the courage to tackle that. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so now for the awkward 2 questions to end our time together. We could do 5 more episodes, and maybe we will. And I want to encourage my listeners too, that if you need a continuing ed class, or you need education class, you're considering real estate, because I know some of you aren't even licensed, and you want to learn from someone who's super passionate. Like, a lot of people teach, but when you hear Jenny teach, or any of her instructors teach, there's a passion to it. Like, they've all been in the business. They know what they're talking about. I've known her to lose her voice several times because of how passionate she is. Sign up and take a class. You would love it.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you, Jenny, and we'll put a link to your school in the show notes too, so people can get on there. But tell me, this is an awkward question. When you and I talked about this, and a lot of people say this, except for people like me who love to talk about themselves. This is a hard one for you, I know. But tell me, and when I mean superpower, I mean, what is it that you're put here to do that you know that if you don't do it, it's going to get undone? What is your superpower, and at least from your perspective? And I promise nobody's going to think you're bragging on yourself. Just talk to me about it.
Okay. It really is a hard question. You and I talked about this before the show started, and I said, gosh, Tad, that makes me have to look within myself and know what I'm doing, to impact everyone. But I think that is my answer. My goal and my superpower is to impact other people so that they can have a thriving, successful, healthy, happy life. And whether that's talking about breast implant illness or that's helping them start a new career where they can, where they're not living paycheck to paycheck any longer, whether that is, I've had people in my pre-licensing classes where they just break down and start crying and going, I've never understood math, and you just made it so easy to understand math. I have felt like an idiot my entire life. That is what creates the passion, is giving someone else that confidence, that ability, that drive, to be the best version of themselves. And I think that's why I'm just so transparent and open with everything I do, is because, and you did say this before the show, is that I'm human. We're all humans. And I think in this world we live in, we like to put up this wall and act like we're not human, and act like everything's perfect and every day is roses. And it's not. That's not realistic. And I think when I can be open and vulnerable to the world, that it makes an impact, and it helps them understand that it's okay to be to go through some downfall and some adversity, and what you do with it on the other side is what you're gonna become of it.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. You hit the nail right on the head, because I would have defined you as an inspiring person who is authentic, and so I think inspiring is the word I would use for you. Like, you and I are a lot alike in that way. I think that's one of my missions in life, is to inspire. And I love that when you talk about that, your business, it's like it doesn't even matter what business you're in. Like, it doesn't matter. You just happen to land at a real estate school, but you're using the school as your method of inspiration.
It is.
That's your tool. It's your platform. And what a solid thing. You could just make it your mission to be the best school ever, which would be good, and would be meaningful. But the fact that you're willing to take it to the next level and use that to inspire and impact, use the word impact, I think that's spot on. So well done. I love it.
Thank you.
You didn't even blush talking about yourself, so you did it well. And I can see, my listeners cannot. The other thing, tell me a book that's meant something to you. You mentioned John Gordon's The Energy Bus, but what's a book that our listeners might enjoy?
I read a lot of books, and honestly, it may not be a tangible book. It may be an audible, but while I'm painting a spare bedroom in my house, that's actually how I read The Energy Bus. But either way, I have a lot of books on my list. And so it really depends on what avenue they would want to read it. If they are a business owner or a CEO or in some type of managerial role, there's two books that I really like. One is called Traction, and the other one is called 6 to 7 Figures. And so as a visionary business owner, because I would say that I teeter between visionary and implementer, but my passion and my happiness lies in the visionary side of it. The 6 to 7 Figures is a book more about implementing and putting those systems in place and what's the next level and how to transition, because you're typically either going to be an implementer or you're going to be a visionary. You're not usually successful at both, right? So strengths and weaknesses, and it tells you how to transition between the two as your business grows. So I really like those books from a business standpoint. Another book I like is Good to Great. That's a leadership book. I read a lot. I only read nonfiction, but it's usually going to be self-help, leadership, or business. But those would be my most recent, I would say, of my favorites. Essentialism is another one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Essentialism, I like that book because I think the world gets wrapped up in the chaos of what the world says you're supposed to do and be. Mm-hmm, Social media shows all these things. And so essentialism says weed out these things that aren't essential. And so I think that really grounds you. I liked that book.
So we probably should have started with that question, because you answered that question better than anybody I've ever asked it. It was like, I can tell by your answer that you're serious about development and growth. And nurture, and being your best self, even in the midst of everything else. So I appreciate that. Last question, and then we'll sign off. Other than I'm going to ask you to identify yourself by spelling your name and all that in a minute. What is one thing that you do? The title of our podcast is Rise Up in Real Estate. Mm-hmm. And I named it that because I had someone say, you got to be careful because people think you're going to start a revolution. Like this rise up thing is a big deal now because of the capital, blah, blah, blah. But I named it that because I didn't even think about that. I named it that because I want to figure out what it is that people do. Ordinary people like you, what is it that you do extra to make you extraordinary? On a daily basis, what's one thing that you do that helps you rise above the mediocrity in our world and because you're not normal. I mean, you've exceeded expectations. Your mom and dad are proud and all of that. You're an entrepreneur powerhouse for sure. But what is it that you do every day? Is there something, a secret or something that you do that makes a difference?
I don't think that there's a secret. I really don't. I think that being a decent human being sometimes is not the norm. And so if you want to call it, I don't know if you want to call it superpower or what makes me rise above the rest, is I do what I say I'm going to do. And I keep my word. And sometimes that's hard to find. And sometimes it's hard to keep. To be honest with you, it's not always easy, but doing the right thing will always come back to you tenfold and help everyone else that you encounter. So I always keep my word. And number two, I always have a goal list. And at the end of the day, my day doesn't end until my list is done. And the definition of procrastination is just making tomorrow even harder. And so tomorrow's going to come with its own list. And so I feel like if I just keep passing it over to the next day, eventually that builds up. And so keeping your word, doing what you say you're going to do, and fulfilling that goal list you have every day is my biggest task that I want to ensure I cover each day.
That's amazing. So you can actually be authentic and honest and a good human being. Wow, that's amazing. And have goals and read books and paint. When you said painting spare rooms, I thought if she's an artist, and I didn't know it, I'm going to be so embarrassed. But you mean painting like a big wall? I can do that.
No, it was a solid color.
But I hate it. I hate painting, even a solid color. I can't stand it. Well, Jenny, you've been as pleasurable as I thought you would be to be on the show. I appreciate our listeners being patient because I'm sitting in a Starbucks because the office was super busy and I thought it would be quieter here, but they've got the music pumping. If you could hear it, I hope it was great background music. But thank you for taking the time to share part of your story. Tell my listeners how they can contact you if they want to. Spell your name. Tell me where they can find you on social media or email, phone number, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yes. So I'm Jennifer Nicely. Last name is Nicely, just like nicely done. That's our little cheesy pun we like to use. Pinnacle Real Estate Academy is the school. We are licensed in North and South Carolina for all licensing courses that you would want to take, plus continuing education and professional development. We are on all socials under Pinnacle Real Estate Academy. We also have a YouTube channel, and I have around 160 videos on YouTube that are of me giving tidbits of information. It could be real estate, it could be life information, it could be leadership, guidance. It covers a very a broad array of topics. So all videos are less than 10 minutes. So it's a quick read, quick listen, and feel free to share those URLs with anyone you would like to. Our phone number here at the school, 843-410-3340. And our main email address, info@pinnaclerealestateacademy.com. And our website is long, but it's pinnaclerealestateacademy.com.
That's awesome. The good thing about long websites is you just put it in once and save it in your browser, and it's always there.
There you go.
Save it as a favorite. So I'm going to say from now on that Pinnacle Real Estate Academy is licensed in 2 states, soon to be 50.
Yes.
That's my new tagline for you. And that I appreciate you. Jenny, you have been a treat. Thank you very, very much. And Rise Up Nation, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. We'll be in touch very soon on our next episode. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Well, hey, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Rise Up in Real Estate. If you liked hanging out with us today, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Rise Up in Real Estate. Also, follow us right now on your favorite podcast host to hear more episodes. We really appreciate you spending some of your time with us. And until next time, let's do each other a favor and all help each other rise up.